Before we begin, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and the notification bell to help the channel grow and keep up to date with the latest videos. Hi and welcome to another video by me, FlowJoe. Today we're going to be looking at deep linking to a Teams chat with an adaptive card. Now if you haven't done so before and you haven't touched any adaptive cards, then I suggest you checking out the first two videos in this series. The first will actually give you a brief introduction to adaptive cards. The second will build upon that by bringing data back with an adaptive card. And then this is now building on that further with deep linking to a chat. So let's get started. Firstly, we have our adaptive card that we had made previously, and what that looks like is this. It just has a simple title, it has a text entry box, it has a date box, and it has a submit button. Then what we also have is we have Microsoft Teams. And in Microsoft Teams we have one team with two channels. So we have the Deep Link Demo Initial Adaptive Card. This is where we're going to be posting this adaptive card to for a person to fill out. And then what we're going to do is we're going to pass the information that we've gathered from this adaptive card to another adaptive card that we're going to send to a different team. This team will basically be used to gather the information passed back by individuals and then allow those people that monitor this team to jump straight into a chat with someone. So imagine they're leaving feedback, for example, on a HR response. What they can do in this stage then is they can easily click a button in the adaptive card with all the information that they see and jump straight into a chat with an individual and then start inquiring about what has been going on. So where do we begin then? Well, let's take a look at our adaptive card example. What we want to do here, just to show it, is change the title, so Deep Link Card Example. Then we don't want to actually have any data input, or we don't want to have a date input. So what we're going to do is we're just going to drag two text blocks there and remove our previous ones. Now this initial text block, we're going to set an ID, and this is just going to be thoughts feedback. Now the reason why this is thoughts feedback is because we're going to be passing in the information that the person's provided in their initial adaptive card into this adaptive card, and we're going to overwrite this new text block. Then in here we're going to be doing response date for our ID, and then we're going to replace this with the date of the initial response that was given from the initial adaptive card. And then here, instead of doing a submit button, what we're going to do is we're going to change our button. So let's get rid of our submit button. We've got an action set there. We want to add an action and we want to open a URL. Now it says that we need a valid URL property at this particular point. So let's firstly set an ID of chat, because that's what we're going to be using it for. And then we need to set the URL property here. So if we click on that, it's going to open the action URL. So we've got our action set of chat, and this is going to be an ID of chat with user. And you can see this URL here. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to create this URL on Power Automate and pass it through. So right now let's just put http www.example.com. And as you can see there, we'll have a button that will effectively allow us to jump straight into a chat with someone once we've provided that URL. but we don't want the title to be action.open URL, so let's change that to chat with name. And what we're going to do is we're going to replace name, or we're basically going to replace all this text with chat with, and we're going to grab the person's name so that we can have a dynamic button that will say chat with Joe, chat with Jax, chat with Sarah, for example. Okay, so let's then grab this information down here. Don't forget to change the target version to 1.2. And we've also got our MS Teams width 4. If you haven't seen that before, check out the other video. It explains how you can use the full width of Teams messaging. So let's just grab this information and bring it over to Power Automate. Okay, so we're on Microsoft Power Automate, and we are looking at our previously created flow, with the exception of we've got the get user profile. And this is just an example if you're using the get user profile action to allow you to get individuals' information. So once we get the information back with this post adaptive card and wait for response, we're going to want to post another adaptive card, which is the one that we've just created. So if we look for post adaptive card and just use the same thing, so the post adaptive card and wait for a response. Then what we're going to do is we're going to select post in a channel, and it will load the team ID here. So we'll just select the adaptive cards examples team, and then we're going to select the feedback channel. So this will be a different channel to the adaptive card that's going to be posted in the initial adaptive card. Okay, so we've copied our adaptive card here and we paste it into the message section, and then you can see all the adaptive card JSON appear here. Now, what we want to do is we want to replace the text of new text block and new text block 2 to be what we get back from the individual. So if we remove that and select that there, you can see the dynamic data is passed here. And what we can see is we can see the post adaptive card and wait for a response, which is the initial one, will allow us to select the thoughts that they pass through. So we can just select that, and then the dynamic data will be passed from the other adaptive card straight into this adaptive card. And then what we want to do is we also want to effectively add the date. So this time what we're going to do is we're going to use an expression. We're going to use the concat expression. We're going to say date resolved. Actually, we're going to say date provided. And then we're going to pass the date that was given to us from our user, so the resolve date. Then press OK. So then what that will do is it will provide a text of date provided space, and then it will take the dynamic data from our previous adaptive card and pass it into here. Okay, so we've got the thoughts, we've got that. Now, how do we get the actual deep link to the chat? Well, firstly, let's actually take a look at the URL that we need to use. So this is the Microsoft Teams deep link chat URL. Looks very complicated. It's got teams.microsoft.com / a load of stuff. !, users equal. You don't really need to worry about the front part. What you do need to focus on is the question users equal. Why do you need to focus on that? Well, the question mark represents query parameters, and if you don't know what query parameters are, I'll put a blog and video link in the description. Essentially, query parameters allow you to pass information in a URL. Now, if you think of YouTube, you'll have a question mark v equals, and then you'll have like a GUID pass through, and that represents the video that you're going to be watching. Or in essence, this is the same thing. We've got question users equal, and we're going to pass in, for example, the user principal name. So as we're just focusing on that, if we pass in the user principal name, then we'll have that long URL with question mark, users, equals, and then their user principal name. Essentially what we're doing is we're doing question mark, users, equals, their email. So we could have that long URL, question mark, users, equals, joe@flowjoe.io. But what we need to do is we need to concatenate the URL and the user principal name. So just like we saw with the date that we've just done, we're going to do concat, open parentheses, and then we're going to use the actual URL, comma, and then pass through the user principal name. So let's get back to Power Automate now and actually do this. Okay, so we're back on Power Automate then, and we now have our get user profile, we have our post adaptive card. We want to then create the deep link for our chat. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a compose first, and we're going to rename this to get teams deep link, and then we're going to do the concat expression, and we're going to just paste in the URL. I'll put this URL into the description of this video so that you can do that. So we've essentially opened a string, pasted in the URL, comma, and then we want to select the dynamic data from the get user profile to be the user principal name. So let's select that and press OK. So now you can see we've got this big long concat which contains the URL as well as the output of the user principal name. What we then want to do is add another step, and we want to go to Microsoft Teams, and then we're looking for an adaptive card action. So we just want to post an adaptive card to a chat or channel this time. We're not actually waiting for a response. So let's select post adaptive card in a chat or channel. We're going to post as the Flowbot. We're going to select the channel that we want to, because we want to just post it in a channel. We don't actually want to post it to a specific person. We're then going to select the team, which is our adaptive cards examples. Then we're going to select the feedback channel, because that's where we're going to post our new adaptive card. So let's copy this and let's paste our JSON straight into here. And what we're going to then do is we're going to change our new text blocks as well as the URL dynamically. So firstly, let's change this URL because we've already set up the compose. So we can just drop the URL in there. Then we've got title chat with name. Now we want to change this to actually show the person's name. So if we go to expression and do a concat, again, we are going to open a string and just say chat with space, comma, because we need the space in between the strings so that it's represented when it does the concatenation. And then we're going to go to dynamic content, scroll down, and we're going to use their display name and press OK. So now that should say chat with Joe, for example. So then let's look at the text blocks. So the first text block we can place in the thoughts that are returned from the user from our initial adaptive card. And then in the second, we can do another concat and put resolved date space, then do a comma, and then select the dynamic content for the resolved date and press OK. So now when we start this flow, what should happen is we should grab the user profile, we should post the adaptive card to the channel, The person will enter their information, it will come back, we'll have the information stored here in this action, we'll create the deep link to a chat with the individual, we'll then send an adaptive card with this chat deep link to a feedback channel where, say, your HR team could be monitoring it. And then within now, they will be able to see the information that's passed back and then press a button and jump straight into a chat with a user. So let's save that. And then let's test this then. So let's run our flow. Okay, so our flow is running successfully. So let's open the user profile. You can see that the user is Sarah. The display name is Sarah Critchley, and that's what the chat button will use. So let's jump into the initial adaptive card team to see our initial adaptive card. This is my thought example. And then I'm going to select a date, let's say the 1st of June, submit. Okay, so the response was submitted back to Power Automate. If we open this, you can see that we've got all of the information. This is my thoughts example, this is the resolved date. We've then created the deep link to the individual that was replying. In this example, I'm doing the replying, hence why my information comes through the adaptive card, but it would be the end user, which would be this user profile person. And then we've posted another adaptive card. So then let's go into the feedback section. So as you can see here, this is my thought example is passed through. The resolved date is passed through with the 1st of June, which I selected, and it says chat with Sarah Critchley. So if I click on that, you can see chat window opens up straight away, and you can deep link to that individual and start talking. Okay, so let's just go back to our flow. So we've seen how we can do this with the get user profile. And I use this as an example because I wanted to get a user that wasn't myself, because I am obviously responding to this adaptive card, and you cannot deep link chat to yourself. So if you wanted to avoid this whole action process here, what you can actually do is use the email from the return responder. So if we go back here and let's just open up our previous run, and let's look at what we actually got back from the adaptive card. You can see that we've got the user principal name here. So you can actually use the user principal name or the email address directly. So if we click on edit here, let's delete this get user profile, and then let's change this here. So if we go to our URL, we've got our deep links URL here, and we are passing the user principal name through. What we want to do is delete that, and we want to select the dynamic content, and we actually want to get the user principal name from the post adaptive card response. So if we go OK and update that, we can then directly deep link to a chat to that individual. So if we save that, what we're going to see here is we're going to have an issue with the chat with. What we can do here then is let's just remove that for now and just put name and do update, and then let's just save that. And once that's saved, we'll go back and we'll take another look at our run. So we've already adjusted for the user principal name, but we also have the display name here as well. So do you know the chat with that we've just the chat with button that we created, where we use the display name from the get user profile? We can actually use the display name from the adaptive card as well. So if we go edit here again, scroll down through here, go to the title of the button where we've just added the name as a temporary stopgap, and then click dynamic content and select display name and update, and we save that. What will happen then is, rather than doing the request to Office 365 to get the user information, if we just want to directly respond to an adaptive card from the respondent, then whoever's completing that adaptive card will then populate the next adaptive card for their feedback. So we can skip that action entirely and just use the response information from the post adaptive card and wait for a response action. So that's how you can easily deep link from an adaptive card directly into a chat with anyone on Microsoft Teams. Thanks for watching another video by me, Flo Joe. If you liked the video, don't forget to hit that like button or select a video on your screen right now to continue learning more about the Power Platform.